Hello songwriter friends, today we're going to do a special one, Take On Me, a song by a-ha released in 1985. This is my favorite 80s song, one of my favorite songs of all time. It was absolute magic to me when I was a kid, and of course there was the music video as well. I often invoke this song when I want to talk about the harmonic motion from a minor triad down a fifth to a major triad. That's how this song works. B minor down to E major. It has a very distinctive sound. Kind of from solemn down to a little more hopeful, a little more open-sounding major triad. This is a popular harmonic motion in a lot of favorite songs. There's a Gary Jules Tears for Fears song called Mad World, which goes like this. Same thing, that minor triad, down a fifth to the major triad. There's a Chris Isaak song called Wicked Games that goes like that too. It goes through the A major, but it's the same basic motion landing on this major triad. So it's a really cool sound that we like. Okay, so let's take a look at what is happening in the verse for the song. So the first question you might ask is, what key are we in when you hear that? Well, it turns out you can only really be in one place without changing a lot. If you're going to stay in the normal harmonic collection of Western music, there's only one place you can be in the key when you hear that. And here's what I mean. Let's do it in C major just for the sake of being easier to see for a second. So we want a minor triad going down a fifth to a major triad. Well, so we're going to land on a major triad, right? Well, in C major, there are only three major triads, right? 1, 4, and 5. In this case, C major, F major, and G major. So one of those is going to be our landing point. So let's take a look and see what happens. If we want to land on C major, the 1 chord, and we go up a fifth, well, that's the 5 chord, right? That's obviously major down to major. If we want to land on the 4 chord and we go up a fifth, well, we get back to the tonic. That's the 1 chord, major to major, so that can't be it. So let's go to the 5 chord. If we go up a fifth from here, we get to the minor 2 chord. And that's the only place that we can find that relationship. So when you hear minor down to major, at some level your ear knows that this is home, and that this is part of a 2, 5, 1 motion, which is one of the most classic harmonic motions in Western music. A lot of the way we build our songs is we go up by fifths, and then we just play chords from the top back down to home. Okay, this would be A minor to D minor to G major to C major, and that you can build a whole song off that. Okay, now one thing to notice about that progression is that if you keep going down another fifth past home, you get to the 4 chord. Okay, and the 4 chord is an interesting chord. There's something almost a little magical about it. And sure enough, in a lot of songs, especially Christmas music, the progression goes like this until they get to the bridge. And when they want to add drama, they'll turn the 1 chord into a dominant chord and finally go down the last fifth to the 4 chord. Okay, so and the one thing to notice is if you keep going past that, you get to B flat, which is no longer in the key. So you can only go down that one more fifth from your tonic and still stay in the key, but that's the 4 chord. Okay, so let's take a look at what's happening in this verse. So we're starting in B minor, going down to E major, okay, and then we go to A major. Okay, so if what I'm saying is true here, then we should be going from this minor down to the major. That means we're going from 2 to 5, and then from 5 to 1. So A major sounds like our tonic. And then we're going to keep going another fifth to D major, which should be our 4 chord. Okay, so if we're in A major, we got A major. Your 4 and 5 will be D and E, D major and E major. Okay, and your 2 chord will be B minor. So that tracks, that fits with what we're looking at. It's interesting to look at a song that opens with that harmonic progression because it really doesn't let you sit on the tonic. Like you never quite get home, right? Because you kind of scooch by A major on your way to D major. And then you start the whole thing over again. So it goes like this. This is too high for me to sing, but bear with me. We're talking away. 5. I don't know what. 1, 4. I'll say any. 2, 5. Today's another 4. They left to find you. So we set up that motion, okay, which keeps you kind of minor to majoring, doesn't really sit on the tonic, so it's a little bit disorienting. And that's kind of how the verse makes you feel. Maybe, it's certainly emotional, it's out there somewhere. So let's see what happens at the end of it. Shine away, so 2 to 5, but here we change the thing. We've been going down to 1 every time, but this time, instead of going to 1, we're going to go to 6. I've been coming for your love, okay. So what does that mean? Well, when you're used to going 5 to 1, and instead you go 5 to the minor 6, we call that a deceptive cadence. We really like the way that sounds. Instead of here, 2, 5, 1, we go 2, 5 to that kind of misty sounding minor 6 chord. And the reason that works so well is because when you go to the F sharp minor in this case, you're playing two notes from your A major triad. So you're like almost home, right? And in fact, if you make it into a 6 chord that's a minor 7, you add the 7th, you're playing an A major triad, kind of hiding in that chord, right? Just with a different bass note. And so when we go 5 to minor 6 instead of 5 to 1, we're most of the way home. It's just got a shadow on it, like something's changed. Like we made it home, but you can tell something's different, right? So it's a moody way of getting not quite home, and we like that sound. Okay, and that deceptive cadence, by the way, is going to play a big role in how the song works. So, all right. Shine away. There's that deceptive cadence. Now, from here, we're going to go, oh, okay, and go to 1. We're going to do 4, 5, and finally go to that A major so we can sit for the chorus on the tonic. That's the first place we actually land on it. Now, the way we get there, one of the things to think about as we go through the song is these mediant relationships. So an F sharp minor chord happens to include 2 of the notes. Now, it includes 2 of the notes from your A major. It also includes 2 of the notes from your D major, which is your 4 chord. So if we're here, we can move to the 4 chord really easily without making like a dramatic harmonic motion. We just kind of sidestep over there. We're kind of there already in a way. In fact, if you make a D major 7 chord, that includes your F sharp minor, right? You could almost play that chord right there and it would sound kind of nice. So that's how we're going to go from this deceptive cadence onto 6. We're going to sneak over to 4 and use that to go to 4, 5, and finally get take. Okay, and then we'll talk about how the chorus is structured. So we finally arrived in A major, take. Now we're going to the 5 chord, and what you could do is just move your bass note on, and then we're going to go to the minor 6. So 2 things to notice at the same time here. One is that the motion we're doing is just kind of what we were doing before. It's kind of a deceptive cadence. 1, 5, and instead of going back to 1, we go 1, 5, back to that minor 6. Now that's the motion throughout the entire chorus. The thing about it is we get to it in a kind of elegant way. 1, we're going to do a walk down in the bass like this. Okay. One thing about going 1 to 5 is that in the bass, you can take advantage of this half step motion, which sounds really cool. Why is there a half step in the 5 chord? Well, part of the reason the 5 chord works as the dominant is because it's got this leading tone, half step below your tonic. You build a 5 chord, the middle note has that note that goes 1/2 step below the tonic and has that tension pulling you back to the home. That's why, part of the reason why if we were in A minor, you'd still make this major because you want that raised note pulling to the A. Okay. So we can take advantage of that and make a cool bass line that walks down by half step, which in a lot of places half step motions are kind of crunchy, but here's a half step motion that fits very nicely into the key 1 to 5. Okay. Now in this case, we're going to go 1 more step and go to the minor 6. Now, a lot of songs keep this progression going, keep this bass line going. You go to the minor 6, you go to the 1, you go to the 4, 1, 5, 1. And that's a fun progression just to get familiar with. So we're just going to do the first few notes of that. It's a very common, well-trodden path, in other words. 1, 5 to minor 6. Okay. The other thing that's happening when you do that is this deceptive cadence motion, 1, 5 to the minor 6. So, take on me. Now, I think it's important to have that bass line walk down, because if you just go straight to the take on me, it's not quite as gentle or evocative or whatever. I like that chromatic walk down. Take on me. Okay, now that's the motion that the chorus is built around. We're going to do a little 4/5 reset. Take on me, and then back to take me. So it's just the same motion over and over again, 1/5 to that deceptive cadence. So we really like that sound. That's kind of what, in a way, that's the sound that the song is built around. All right. So at the end of one of these choruses, we're going to move to the bridge. And the bridge is an interesting music theory little tidbit, and I really like how it plays into this whole structure. So let's talk about that next. Okay, so we finished out the chorus. In a day or two. I'm going to that 4 chord. Now, we've been going from the 4 chord back to the 2 chord to get needless to say, and that's a very easy harmonic motion, right? D major, we're taking these 2 notes and not changing them at all, we're just adding the B. In fact, you can keep your whole D major chord if you really want to and make it a 2 minor 7, needless to say, and your ear will think that's just fine. So we're going to replace that when we go into the bridge with the most unsettling harmonic motion, where we don't keep any notes, and in fact we move everything by half step. That's like the most unsettling sound you can get. We're going to go from our 4 chord to our minor 3 chord, and notice that the 1 and 5 of your 4 chord both move by half steps down to get to that minor 3 chord, and it has that really distinctive sound. Kind of like the bottom just fell out, right? So you get a lot of drama. So that's part of the reason why that minor 3 chord sounds so cool right there when we get to it in the bridge, because we were expecting something a lot more sonorous and easy, and we get this instead. So we get this sound, and then we follow that with a G major, okay, which sounds like a villain chord, right? Like it's a major triad, but it sounds really dark somehow in that context. So let's take a look at why that is. If I were to ask you to play a G chord in the key of A major, your choices would be G sharp, because we don't have a G, and then B and D, and you'd get a diminished chord, which is a pretty crunchy sound. So if we went from here to the natural G chord, the G sharp diminished chord, it would be a pretty terrible sounding motion, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to replace this by dropping this note down a half step. And now you get a G major triad, which is a major triad that in every other context would sound nice and bright. But because you expected a diminished chord, because you just lowered this bass note by half step, okay, you lowered it not just by half step to one of the notes in A minor, right? Now G major is a chord from A minor, from your minor key. So it has all this darkness around it that make your ear kind of suspicious of it, that makes it sound dark even though it's a major triad. That's why it sounds so cool right there. This, right? Okay, so that's that motion. Now, the next thing that happens is arguably the most beautiful moment in the song. We hear this that leads us to the B minor. I love that moment, right? It's so beautiful. And then we go to the E major, and then back to this. Okay, so what's happening right there? Like, why is that so beautiful? Well, one of the things that happens when you invoke a flat 7 is that you're creating a chord relationship, which is a very conspicuous relationship. Anytime you hear 2 major triads a whole step apart, that naturally happens in one place in the key, which is the 4 and 5 of a given key. So when you hear G major, it kind of makes you be like, wait, have we just modulated to D major? Because that's what it would be. It'd be the 4 and 5 of D major. And in fact, if we get to that point, if I give you this, you know, your ear's probably like, oh, that sounds fine, right? That sounds nice, because you're used to that 4-5 taking you to 1. All right, so let's see what happens here. We hear this note, which by the way is the 3rd note of A major. So if I played an A major chord, it wouldn't sound all that wrong, right? It's the leading tone of D. It makes it kind of sound like we're going to pull to that D major. Okay. But instead of that, say we're in D major for a minute. We're going 4, 5. It's a fake out. It's taking you to the minor 6 chord in D major, which would be a deceptive cadence, right? That 5 to the minor 6 motion. Okay. But it's a deceptive cadence in a different key, right? The deceptive cadence sound, which has been the core engine of how our chorus works, we're now hearing it in a different key. We're now hearing this B minor chord, which was the first chord we ever heard in the song, cast as the deceptive cadence in D major, right? So you're like, oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful way to look at that chord. I hadn't thought of that chord that way before. Okay, so here we are in B minor. But then we're going to go down a 5th, right? The same motion we started with the song. And then we recenter you by starting over where we did before to the A major. Now, of course, we do keep going to the D major, right? So it's a little blurry, maybe. But you're deliberately kept in a little bit of tension of where home exactly is. And one might argue that the whole point of that whole structure is to have for that one moment that it's just so beautiful. So anyway, a lot of really cool stuff in there. Who knows how much of that they just found versus actually understood what they were doing? We'll never know. I guess somebody could ask them, but if you guys are watching this video, please let me know. Anyway, one of my favorite songs ever. I hope that opens up how it works, opens the hood so you can see, shed some light on the engine, and thank you very much for watching.